My name is Katie Brett. I'm a Senior Assistant Director in the Office of Undergraduate Financial Aid. I also help facilitate the safety net program. So if you're like, hey, her name sounds familiar, we may have communicated if you've ever applied through safety net. Today, Josh and I are going to be talking to you about off-campus living, budgeting, and your financial aid. We know that the deadlines for declaring whether you're going to be on or off campus next year are coming up. And they're coming up very quickly this year. They're very early this year. All of you should have received an email in December. Did you get that from Yale College with the deadlines? Because this year they're different depending upon what grade you're in or what year you're in school. And Josh, do you want to do your intro?
Yeah, hello everyone. My name is Josh Ferris. I use he, they pronouns. I'm the Assistant Director for FGLI Student Success here at the Forbu Center in the Office of Educational Opportunity. I oversee the Figly 5 program, which is a peer mentorship group and also community group for first-time outcome students here at Yale.
So we're going to go over the financial aid portion first, and then Josh is going to come in and do his wonderful stuff about budgeting and things to think about with when you choose to live off campus. So how is your financial aid calculated if you live off campus? It's actually calculated the same, and your financial aid does not change. We use standard housing and foods costs in your cost of attendance. We're going to show a little bit later in a slide deck about how that appears on your financial aid offer letter. The housing and full meal plan will not appear on your bill. That's where you're going to see the difference. And I'm also going to show an example of that so you actually know what to look for. The off-campus meal plan called Yale Connect will be automatically billed, but you can waive that. And we'll talk more about that later as well. The application process remains the same. And did the rollover happen, Carrie? Okay, so right now in Yale Hub, you guys should be able to see your financial aid application material requirements for 26-27 for next year. We'll show whether you're complete, whether you're incomplete. We are already working on reading continuing student files. If you are a QuestBridge match student, you only need to complete the FAFSA. The FAFSA opened up October 1st, so it's all ready to go for you. If you're a QuestBridge regular decision or a regular domestic student, you do need to do the FAFSA, the CSS profile, and submit 2024 tax returns and W-2s. If you're an international student, you do not need to reapply unless there has been a change in your financial circumstances. So just going to put that plug in there because the more we can get continuing students to complete earlier, the better off it is going to be, especially for those of you who will be using your refunds to pay for off-campus housing. There is absolutely no need to contact your PFAC and notify them that you are intent to live off campus because it does not change how we read your financial aid application. However, if you have questions or need help looking at the bigger picture or the breakdown and need to know like what you could anticipate in terms of a refund, please feel free to schedule an appointment with your feedback on our website. You can do that so that then if you have unique situations or you want to feel better as you're looking at apartments, we're here for you, but you don't have to notify us that you intend to live off campus. So this is the top part of your financial aid offer letter. And this is an example from 25-26 because we do not have 26-27 yet. And this is what I was talking about with your estimated cost of attendance. So you'll see that housing and food is still there. Housing and food will remain in your offer letter. You do not want it removed from your cost of attendance because then it's going to reduce your financial aid. We don't want that to happen because you're still going to have those housing and food expenses, whether you live on campus or off. Now on YalePay, the correlating spring bill looks like this, where you can see tuition was billed, the meal plan for Connect off campus was billed. This student chose to waive it, so you can see where it was removed, and that the Yale health coverage was billed. Then you have what the payments and credits were. So this was all the scholarships applied. And then this student received a $10,957 refund for the spring term to use towards those off-campus housing and food expenses. Do you have any questions over this? I'm pretty casual, so if you have questions during the presentation, just you feel free to raise your hand or shout them out. We're good. So we often get asked this question: does Yale pay me to choose to live off campus? No, we do not incentivize students to live off campus, but it is your billed expenses minus your scholarship determines whether you have a refund or a balance due to Yale. And your refunds can be used to cover your off-campus living expenses. But no, we don't give an extra bonus if you choose to live off campus. It's just your financial aid is being paid to you in the form of cash instead of being paid to Yale, because we don't pay your landlord. We don't pay, Frontier for your internet. We give you the money to make those payments yourself. And it is dependent, the amount of the refund or whether there is a balance due, it is dependent upon each student's financial aid package. So this is very important because I know a lot of you talk among your peers, which is fantastic. But don't use your peers' financial aid package to determine what your refund is going to be or won't be for next year. That is a conversation you need to have with your PFAC to help you determine what you can expect for your budget. Things to consider when you're regarding your refunds. Refunds are available to you to take 6 days prior to the start of the term. So remember, is this before or after your deposit for your rent is due, or your deposit with the electric company? Is rent going to be due before you get your refund? Okay, because I know in the spring, students will sign a lease and a landlord may want their deposit with the signing of the lease. So if you have to pay a deposit in March or April, you're not getting the refund until 7 days before the start of the term. If you have to move in on August 1st, but your refund's not coming until the end of August, you're going to need to keep that in your summer budget with however you are. If you are working, you maybe need to talk to your families about, can they front the money and you reimburse them? So keep the timing of your expenses in mind with when you're getting your refunds. And be mindful too of the spring term refunds and expense timelines. When did you guys start for the spring? You guys don't remember? It's been that long of a week. It has been that long of a week. I completely empathize with all of you there. So you started this Monday. You were able to move in last Friday on the 9th, right? Most rents are due on the 1st of the month. So with 6 days before the 12th was January 6th, rent would have been due January 1st. So just keep that in mind as well. And that your refunds may not cover all of your expenses. So I'm really grateful that Josh partners with us on this presentation, because he's going to break down all the expenses you can expect as an off-campus student. So what happens if you have a parent share, and how does that impact your financial aid? If your parent share exceeds the cost of housing and food, there may still be amount due to Yale. It may be less than what your family has paid in the past, but there may still be an amount due to Yale on your YalePay. After the balance is paid, any remaining parent share should be redirected to your off-campus living expenses. So that is a conversation when you're determining if you're living off campus in your budget. Take into consideration the parent share and have that discussion with your parents. Like, hey, my parent share is less than my housing and food, so I'm going to get a partial refund for housing and food, but what you would have paid to Yale, we need to direct that to my off-campus living expenses. How is that going to work? Do you want to pay it to me per semester, like how you paid the Yale bill? Do you want to give me a monthly stipend? Are you saying you're not going to provide your parent share at all because there's not a bill to Yale? And so these are conversations. Please don't make an assumption with your parents. And we know money's hard to talk about with them, but I know you guys can do it. If there is no balance owed and the refund is not equal to the cost of housing, then the parent share should be redirected to fill that gap. Other things to keep in mind. Study abroad and your off-campus living expenses, okay? If you choose to take a semester abroad and you signed a year lease in New Haven, we cannot increase your financial aid to cover those lease obligations for your New Haven apartment because all of your financial aid gets redirected to your study abroad program. Financial aid is based on the fall term and the spring term only, which equals about 9 months. Most apartment leases are for 12 months, which means there's a 3-month gap between your financial aid to cover housing and food and your lease. So you'll need to figure out how are you going to cover that 3-month gap. Making a decision after the housing deadline may result in a 25% housing relinquishment fee. This is a standard cost, and it is not covered by financial aid. The fee for the spring, like right now, in this academic year, is $1,443.75. That's a lot of money. So you want to make sure you're keeping in those deadlines. They can all hear me.
Oh, just okay.
You want to keep those deadlines in consideration. And they are very firm deadlines. So it's 5 p.m. on the date. And that's why I'd asked all of you earlier if you'd gotten that email from Yale College about housing for the 26-27 year. That went out in December. This year they have different deadlines depending on what class year you are. And the first one for sophomores and juniors is actually coming up at the end of February. So that's like right around the corner. And the one for seniors is in March, early March this year, as opposed to last year was the end of March. So keep that in mind. Your refund will be reduced if you choose to have a meal plan. You need to keep in mind costs beyond rent, because just renting your apartment does not necessarily include all the things that are in your dorm room. Your dorm room includes, or your residential college room, it includes your electricity, it includes your internet, includes your water, your garbage. Those are things that, depending on where you choose to live off campus, may be separate from your rent expense. You need to consider roommates. Are you living with people? Are you not living with people? Are these people you have lived with before? Are you compatible in terms of, where are you going to keep the thermostat? And is the expectation that you're going to try and keep your power bills low? So in the winter, you expect everybody to put on sweats and sweatshirts and not run around in tank tops and shorts. And during the summer, the opposite, so that you can keep the thermostat at a reasonable level so your utility bills are affordable. The commute to school is where you picked, hey, you got a great deal, but do you have to walk 2 miles to get to class? Is it not on the Yale shuttle line? Those are things you want to consider as well. And then the cost of furnishing an apartment. You may need different, right down to the sheets and towels. You probably could take your towels from your dorm, but your bed may be a different size. So you want to take that in mind. Your only dishes, what are you going to use to cook, eat with, silverware? Do you need a lamp, a desk? Those are all costs to take into consideration as well. Meal plans. I know somebody asked Alex earlier about meal plans. When you move off campus, you are no longer required to participate in any type of meal plan. It is 100% optional. The off-campus Yale Connect meal plan is automatically billed, like I showed you on the example earlier. That student opted out of the meal plan. You can waive your meal plan. You can keep it in. You can find out more details about the Yale Connect meal plan on the dining website. It will tell you exactly what's included. This year, my team, if you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it was $1,850 per semester for the Yale Connect meal plan. And then you want to watch the deadlines for what is the deadline for when you have to either opt out of the meal plan or switch your meal plan. Because for those of you who have no desire in meal prepping or brown bagging it, bringing lunch to work to school, like I think of all of us who bring our lunches to work every day, or you have no interest in cooking, you can opt into a full meal plan and come to campus and take all of your meals on campus, like how you do as you live in the dorm or in the residential college. Is a grocery store not convenient to you? You know, adding, if you say, oh, no big deal, I can just DoorDash everything. Next time you DoorDash something, take a look at all of those fees they add onto it. I did not want to go out in the cold last week. I was missing one item for a meal. So I decided to DoorDash it, and it was the most expensive can of salsa I've ever purchased in my life. It was like $15 for this jar of salsa because of all the fees that they add on. And then any meal plan that you choose or to have will affect the amount of refund that you have. So the student that I had shown you earlier received just under $11,000 in refunds. If they had kept the Yale Connect plan, that refund would have been reduced by the $1,850. If they had opted for the full meal plan, it would have been reduced further by the cost of that meal plan. So what if my expenses or your expenses exceed the cost of attendance? If they exceed the cost of attendance, that's where you can speak to your personal financial aid counselor, your PFAC, because we can use loans we can increase your cost of attendance for the purpose of loans only. We cannot increase your financial aid because the place you've chosen to live is more expensive than on-campus housing. Okay. Do you all have any questions about the financial aid portion before I pass it off to Josh? Yes, ma'am.
How do we know who our personal financial aid counselor is? Where can we find them?
Great question. So on our website, under contact us, there's a section that says schedule an appointment with my personal financial aid counselor, and it lists all of us. You can read a little bit about us, and it says based on your last name, who your personal financial aid counselor is. Also, what kind of student you are, if you're an international student or a domestic student. Yes.
Do you know when the 2026, 2027 cost of attendance for like housing and food and then for the meal plans would be out?
It's usually announced by the beginning of March, right?
Typically by mid-February, those costs will be on our website. It may be sooner than that. We're just waiting for final approval from the Corporation Board of Trustees.
And this is before the housing drop deadline, right? Like if you decide.
Where it may be tight.
It's pretty close,
Pretty close
now based on the new deadlines that were set by Yale College for housing selection. Could be pretty close.
But your PFAC will be happy to walk through the numbers with you based on this year and based on your financial aid package for this year. If you know things have not changed much with your family, you know that will be pretty close to what the number is and help you budget. Okay. I'm gonna pass off to you, sir.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Katie. Can we give Katie a round of applause, please? Thank you so much to Financial Aid for coming by to the Fort Hughes Center for running this important session, because as many of y'all are obviously here to consider, living off campus is a different experience than living on campus, right? There's a certain level of freedom that comes with this draw. There's a certain level of being able to have more autonomy around which direction you're going, putting a little bit of physical space between the campus and where you reside. All of these are valuable, but they do, like everything else in life, cost trade-offs. And in particular, it will be the cost of living off campus. The important way of making sure that you can actually pursue this, if that's what you want to do, is to have a budget. So what is a budget? Baseline. It is a written plan for how your money is being used every month. It looks at your income, your expenses, and what your goal is. The critical part here is that it's written. Even if you are a math whiz, it is really, really important to have the numbers down because things add up very, very quickly. And as an adult, as you're starting to realize, you have to manage your own money. You want to make sure that you're budgeting so that you don't run out of this money. You want to make sure that everything that financial aid is providing you if you decide to live off campus is stretched beyond the 9 months for the full 12-month lease for wherever you're residing. You want to make sure that you have enough money in your budget so that you can fully engage in everything you want to do here at Yale. It is financial insecurity and the weight of not having enough finances is a real thing, and it does produce anxiety. It does produce stress. It prevents you from being able to fully engage in your classes, your extracurriculars, spending time with your friends. That's why you want to have a written plan down, much like as you're writing your projects and your papers, writing everything down takes it out of your mind, puts on the paper, gives you a plan that you can then say, this is what I've got, this is what I'm going to move forward with. It's also to help prepare you a baseline for the future so that you could achieve whatever goals you have. When you live off campus, everything costs money. Your rent is the biggest part. It's the amount that's going to go into residing in the place you're at. You may have to pay for water. You may have to pay for gas, for heating, or for if you have a gas stove, pay for that as well. Note on gas, I just learned, even if you're not using your gas stove, they may charge you like $30 a month just to be hooked up to the gas line. Electricity, that also costs money with the usage. You will not believe how much electricity costs balloon based on your usage. Groceries cost money, internet, transportation. You need renter's insurance, not just if you're living off campus, but if you're living on campus. You must have renter's insurance because if an emergency happens in your personal possessions or something happens when your roommate makes a disaster, safety net will not be able to cover the full cost of any repairs. Let's say, heaven forbid, your laptop gets damaged. Your renter's insurance will allow you to cover that 800 chunk, that the bigger chunk of your laptop, and that deductible that you're paying for the insurance. That's something that safety net can cover. Does anyone here not know what a deductible is? Totally fine if not. Okay, perfect. We'll move on. Cable and satellite. If you have TV, if you have any interest in entertainment that way, costs money. Garbage. It could cost money to take trash out. That place isn't. It's not just removed for free. Recycling, home security service. If you're residing in a house, you may have to pay for lawn care as well. That might be part of your renter's agreement. In addition to landscaping, in addition to snow removal, everything here costs money. It is shocking. It is always confusing, even for adults. My fiance, who's 5 years older than me, we just got solar installed. And for the last year, I have been saying over and over again, yes, it's the sun. No, it's not free. There are costs that have to be in place as well. That is something to keep in mind. But how are you going to keep all of those numbers in track, right? That's how come you want to have a budget so you can have this all written down and you know this is what your monthly projections are going to cost. Your internet, is going to be consistent. Your rent is going to be consistent. Expenses like electricity and water, they may be more fluid. I recommend preparing a higher amount of what you might expect you will use in a month versus having a lower amount. That way, if your variable switches, like our electric bill went up by $200 this month, I'm still trying to find out exactly why. It's always good to have a higher cap such that if there are spikes, you don't end up running out of money. But we'll go over that in a little bit. Ways to save funds. Rent your books from the library. This is an immense library that's here. Utilize everything that's available here. You can also go online onto the course reserves and borrow direct to get a book that might not be available here. Review prices on Amazon, online marketplace. I don't know if this is switched around. This might be the way I had it before. So I haven't looked at these slides in a while. But essentially, what you want to do in order to make sure your money is stretching is that you're utilizing all the resources available here on campus, even if you are living off campus. Saving on consumables, on clothing and laundry. If you're living off campus, you're no longer having access to the laundry rooms here, I believe, right? You can't access your residential college, or can you still?
You can, but then you just have to walk and bring your entire hamper there.
Yeah, it's much of a distance there. So you still have to pay for the laundry mats outside if they're not available in your dorm, in your apartment. Even if you're in your apartment, when I first moved here, I was living on Park Street, they may still charge you porters to utilize the washing machine there. So that may also be a cost as well. The place where your money would really go beyond all of this is you're spending money that you very much get to enjoy right now on campus, right? Coffee, dining, entertainment, coffee, trips, coffee, activities, coffee. I'm telling you, every single dollar adds up, and you want to make sure you have a plan for this. If you have not already started to plan your travel to wherever you're going this summer, start to do that as soon as you know what your summer plans are, because flights do start to go up very soon. I have heard from executives at France Airlines that they do actually check the algorithms when you're buying it. So it does matter when you're looking at flights and transportation. Go on incognito. Make sure you're booking them on a Tuesday. Make sure you're booking them at least 3 months in advance. These are all ways to help stretch your funds. And with major purchases like this, like Katie mentioned, the refund timeline does not always doesn't really align up with the rental timeline. So you always want to make sure that these big purchases are accounted for in advance. Now, what does a budget template look like? For me personally, I like to write everything down on an Excel file that I know every penny where it's going, left, right, and center. My way of doing this is I would have a corner, I'll have multiple tabs. One, which is my baseline expectation of what the month is going to look like. And then each month afterwards would have its own tab based on actual expenses. So my projected expenses are here on the left. Let's say that rent is costing $1,200. Water estimated at $20, gas $75, electricity $150, groceries $400, internet $55, renters $15. That total living cost right there, just for baseline living, $1,915. Then you can start looking at your personal expenses as well. Toiletries, laundry, cleaning supplies, dining out, entertainment, any miscellaneous costs you have there. That could potentially be $225 there. This budget is built on financial aid's projected personal budget of $1,700. And so you're trying to make this all stretch, not just from your personal budget there, but also your housing budget. This is not from this year's numbers, I believe it's last year's, of $11,300 for housing, $8,600 for food if you do not take a meal plan on campus. And that is a total amount of $1,900. You need to make this $1,900 stretch in addition to the personal budget of $1,700, which is made through work on campus. Any questions about this? I know I'm like flying through this.
It's 2,700 for
It's
personal.
2,700 now? Yes. Oh, perfect. I believe this is an annual expense. Yes, sorry, 2,700 for personal expenses. Does anyone have any questions about this? So overall, you'll have your total expenses at the bottom left here, 2,140. That means based on your projected income on the right, which is from financial aid, your total amount divided by 12, instead of divided by 9 there because you want to stretch it for the whole year, and any work you're making a part-time job, your total income is $2,258. Accounting for all of these monthly expenses, that means you have $118 left over. I recommend if you have money that's left over and you don't have expenses like loans or credit card loans, which hopefully you should not be having a credit card loan, you should utilize that to pay those debts down. If not, it is always good to put money aside because then it starts in savings. As soon as you're able to start putting money in either a savings account or a CD or even in retirement, that is all helpful. I've been lucky enough that I could start putting retirement into 4 or 5 years now. And I just looked at for the first time now, it's actually starting to grow on itself. And it feels really good to have that happen. So the sooner you're able to start putting this money aside, the sooner it's going to be able to start compounding and grow for you as well. You also want to account for those bigger annual expenses that might happen throughout the year, such as your 2 trips to Yale and books. This could be a lot. $900 projected for Florida, 2 round trips there. $1,000 for books. You can cut that $1,000 of books if you're renting here, if you're looking at thrift books, if you're looking at borrowing books that way, or you use the immense resources of the internet to find what you need. And you can also reduce your travel costs if you're looking at booking flights in advance. Comments, questions, concerns? No. So now what does that mean month to month? So you've got this budget here that you know. You have $2,258 that's coming in, $600 from your part-time employment, and then the additional amount from financial aid. That's your budget on the top left. Your living budget in orange, that is all the personal expenses that you have, the more fluid expenses that you're going to have for the month. And then the monthly living budget is your residential expenses, and your monthly personal budget is your more fluid expenses. That's what your budget is, your projected budget. Then you have your actual expenses. Now, my way of doing this is I do it on Excel because then it can add up all the numbers. One of my roommates used to do it by hand. We also have some apps that we can mention as well that can take care of it if you link it to your accounts. But essentially what you want to do is you want to document everything as it's going along. So you know you paid your rent, you know you paid your water, your electricity costs were a little lower this month than you expected, water, gas was $15 less than you expected, internet is traditional, groceries can vary depending on whatever you're buying and depending on whatever sales or where you're going for your food. And that is going to be all your living expenses based on the projections that you had in the former tab. So right now we're seeing that if we've only spent this money for our living expenses, we have about $45 left over, which is great. That's what we want. We want to go under it. Then your personal expenses, coffee, $7, toiletries, $15, coffee, $7, movie, $13.50, laundry, eating out, Amazon, coffee, all of these things, these little costs, they add up. And so already we've spent $153 for this month and we have 71 remaining. But also, this is light, right? There's only like 7 or 8 expenses that have been out there. This all adds up. And again, when you go to the coffee shop or when you go shopping or when you go on Amazon, yes, it might look like it's only a few dollars, but a few dollars every single day adds up. And if it's not going into savings, it's going into the debt realm. So if you're not a spreadsheet person, you can also use every dollar. You can use Rocket Money, depending on your checking account. They might also be able to track your funds. If you have Chase, I know you can have your account right there to keep track of what your projected goals are and how much you're trying to spend. Now, we did mention having a part-time position as one way of making up those personal funds that are projected within your financial aid budget. We highly encourage students to actually find a part-time job for this versus taking a loan because 1, less debt that you have to pay off in the future. 2, there's actually research that shows that your GPA will improve if you are taking 6 to 10 hours a week for a job. Why is this the case? If you're doing additional labor, your GPA might improve. It gives you a break, your brain a break from academics. So you're not just doing academic work, but you're actually doing something else that is creating, that is using a different part of your brain. I personally don't think no one likes to labor. I think everyone likes to create. And so you're able to create something else that is not expected of you from your academics or your extracurriculars. It is another realm of social engagement. It's another network that you can connect to, another place, other brains to pick their minds and see what they're thinking. It is also, of course, income so that you have more financial engagement to do the other objectives that you want to do with your money. Ultimately, the choice is up to you, but we do highly recommend that you try to find a position for 6 to 10 hours. Again, some financial resources that you can find. Reach out to your PFAC if you have any and all questions about your financial aid package. They are extremely helpful there. Your residential college dean can also be helpful to talk about financial strategies. Office of Career Strategy is yearning to speak to all of y'all about how to prepare for internships and study abroad and etc. All the ways that you can prepare for your career. The financial literacy website has a lot of resources on navigating credit cards, navigating taxes. Tax season is upon us. More resources on budgeting and more. I'm working with the director of student engagement, Amon, right now to revamp the website, but still there are lots of good resources there. And of course, you can come to the OEO and talk to me or any of our Figly 5 staff. Finally, there's also a FAQ from Yale College on off-campus living that gives you more resources about where to find land, where to find rentals, where to find a plan for living off campus, how you might want to make sure that the commute lines match up with wherever you're at, etc. And then there's also the Yale off-campus housing search. I do recommend utilizing this because it could help you vet out landlords who may be problematic or landlords who are more fair and equitable in terms of their rentals. Any questions? Yes.
I guess like I could give like a few comments. So I've lived off campus for the past 2 years now. And I think like just like some random things I think that also are important. So I think like the first thing is you also have to consider like you have to find an apartment in the first place, and it is an unbelievably stressful endeavor, especially because you have like probably like starting from now a month and a half-ish to find an apartment before the housing deadline happens. There's lots of tools like you can go on Zillow. But one thing I would say, if you know anybody who currently lives off campus, like ask them how they found their apartment, because most likely they could probably do a lease transfer to you, but also they can tell you, I talked to this realtor and they showed me 10 different apartments. So like Farnham Realty, I know like if you contact one of their realtors, they'll show you like 50 different apartments. So like you can go on Zillow, you can talk to a realtor, but definitely talk to your upperclassmen friends who have done the search before, because they can give you tips on how to find an apartment. The other thing is, so over the summer, obviously you have to pay for your rent, but if you're living in New Haven over the summer for research or anything, like you're probably going to get another like sort of stipend for that or a fellowship, and that'll help you cover your summer living expenses in New Haven. Or otherwise, you can sublet your apartment to somebody who's doing research over the summer, so that can also alleviate the burden of like summer costs of the apartment. And the last thing is, if any of you guys have like external scholarships, like for me, I had a science fair scholarship that was applied every single year. That's also on top of the money that Yale will give you for your housing and financial aid. So that was also able to help me like not worry about the cost of living off campus, because I had an additional like $3,000 every single year from that scholarship. So if you have like, I think like Jack Kent Cook pays a yearly amount, like
They cover if you're up to your studentship.
Yeah, so it's $3,000. Yeah.
$3,700
Yeah.
they'll cover.
yeah, so that's like if you have an external scholarship, that $3,700 can go a long way throughout the course of the year in helping alleviate your external costs.
I want to double up on what Samad said on like reaching out to your local network. If people have that already did the legwork looking around at rentals, buildings do not change quickly. Construction doesn't happen fast. Lean in on the information of anyone you know that's looking around, because they'll have done that search for you. I do want to also make a note that if you decide to sublease during the summer, that's awesome. That's a great way to save money, but prepare for it if you can't. You always want to prepare in your budget. Assume worst case scenario with your budget, because once the dollar is out of your hands, it's out of your hands. So you want to make sure that you are top lining whatever expenses you're having, so that you make sure you don't end up going in the red. Thanks, Matt. Any other questions? Now's a great time to start talking about all this. I do want to say that the reason we're giving this presentation is not to dissuade you from living off campus. It is instead to empower you with all the resources and knowledge to make sure that if you decide to make this route, you are able to do so and fully engage in your residence, in your time on campus, in your time at New Haven. That is why we're doing this presentation. If you have any and all questions, please feel free to reach out to any of us for any guidance. Yeah, any final words? All right, thank you all so much for coming. Please take pizza.